Good morning and welcome to the Community Church of Chapel Hill Unitarian Universalist. My name is Bill Rote, a member of the Worship Associates Ministry here at the church. Our minister is Reverend Thom Belote. This week's Within These Walls comes from the Building Project Task Force. On September 21st, all church members and associates were sent a letter from the Board of Trustees. It shared important information about our church's financial situation looking ahead, particularly with respect to the building project. First of all, largely because of a successful annual pledge drive last spring, the church's annual operating budget is in fine shape for this year. Secondly, as you realize, if you've clicked into the website to see the weekly photos and videos since June, new building construction has gotten off to an exciting start. The new wing will be ready for us by next spring. And thirdly, thanks to congregation-wide support for gap narrowing initiatives on top of the success of our original capital campaign for 3-year pledges, the projected 2021 loan balance can feasibly be paid off by June 2022. As appropriate to these stressful and uncertain times, the plan is specifically designed to maximize our flexibility to respond in a personalized manner and time frame. To find out more, please stay online for a live Q&A session after this Sunday's virtual coffee hour, or you can look on the Building Project webpage. The words to our chalice lighting this morning. We come with the weight of life held quietly in the secret spaces of our heart. The ballast of our spirits so easily shift and knock us off center. Into this place we walk, hoping to find a voice, a song, a moment of sacred silence that will bring us back to balance, that will anchor us again in beauty, trust, and connection. We light our chalice this morning in gratitude for many ways which we help each other return home.
Each week, we hold in our service a time for sharing the joys and the sorrows of those in our church community. If you have a joy or a sorrow that you wish to be included in the service, all you have to do is email or text me that joy or sorrow before 9 a.m. on Saturday morning. This week, we have several joys and sorrows of our community to be shared. First one comes from Anne Dupree. Anne asked me to place a stone for Scotta Barcella, who died this past week from pancreatic cancer. Scotta was the dearly loved mother of Anne's son-in-law, Baron Tymus. Anne writes, Scotta and I shared our grandsons Elias and Jesse with so much joy. She has a place forever in our hearts. Jamie Nunnally in our church asked me to place a stone for her old boss, Jim Roberson, who was president of the Research Triangle Foundation and the owner and developer of Research Triangle Park. Jim passed away last week at the age of 85 from pneumonia. And Jamie wants me to place this stone in gratitude for how Jim Roberson helped shape the Triangle region in many ways. Place a stone for Elandria Williams. Our Unitarian Universalist movement lost a visionary leader this past week with the untimely death of Elandria Williams. Elandria was a lay leader in our Unitarian Universalist movement and most recently served as co-moderator of the Unitarian Universalist Association Board of Trustees. The stone is placed in Elandria's memory. The stone is added for the city of Louisville and for each person mourning the absence of justice in the case of Breonna Taylor. A final stone is placed for all those joys and sorrows we hold in our hearts which were not spoken this morning. I invite you to join with me in a moment of silence, reflection, meditation. A moment honoring the joys and the sorrows that live within our own hearts. The joys and the sorrows of this community. The joys and sorrows, and challenges and struggles in our nation and our world. May we resolve in this time to be speakers of truth, to be courageous in our efforts, to hold on to hope, and to hold on in trust that our efforts are good and worthy and make a difference. Amidst all we hold, all we are, all we hope for, and all we love. We say Amen, and blessed be.
Spirit. Until recently, there was a vibrant atmosphere at this facility in North Chapel Hill. Normally, the staff here creates an upbeat, stimulating space for elderly folks, allowing their caregiving families to go to work, do errands, or find some rest from the constant demands of caregiving. Hi, I'm Erich Lieth, and I'm standing in front of the Center for Community Elder Care. Today, I'm asking for your generous support for the Charles House Foundation, which runs this facility, and which since its start 30 years ago, in response to the needs of our first minister, Charlie Jones, has grown into one of the most successful and innovative elder care organizations in this area. Volunteers and financial support from the community church have been a constant part of that growth. With its very popular day program and its 2 residential elder care homes, Charles House enriches the lives of elders and their families in many important ways. Furthermore, the staff serve the broader community through their free caregiver support group and by training nursing and social work students through internships and fellowships. Right now, the residential homes are open and coping with the additional COVID challenges. But the day program has shifted to free online sessions. The absence of fee income significantly reduces financial resources. Your gift will help the Charles House with salaries and operating costs so staff can continue supporting elders and their caregivers. You can make a financial donation either through the Give Now section of our worship service webpage or by mailing a check payable to the community church as indicated on your screen. It is very important that we help them weather this difficult period while we anxiously await the reopening of their day program. Then laughter, conversation, crafts, games, music, communal meals, educational activities, and dancing, and so much more will once again brighten the halls at Charles House. Thank you.
Forgiveness Reconsidered, a sermon for September 27th. There's a passage in the Bible dealing with forgiveness that still makes me gasp every time I read it. It's from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 18. Then Peter came and said to Jesus, "Lord, if another member of the church sins against me, how often should I forgive? As many as 7 times?" And Jesus said to him, "Not 7 times, but I tell you, 70 times 7 times." I'm hard-pressed to think of a passage in the Bible that is more challenging or more troubling. Tonight marks the beginning of the Jewish High Holy Day of Yom Kippur, perhaps the holiest day of the Jewish year. Central to this sacred day of Yom Kippur is the act of atonement, the act of seeking to repair and to mend our relationships with those we have wronged through making restitution to them. And central to this sacred day of Yom Kippur is the commitment to what is known as teshuvah, which literally means turning. Teshuvah, turning away from wrongdoing, turning away from harm, turning towards a more responsible and accountable way of living. This is my 18th year of ministry. Each and every single one of those 18 years, I've preached some message in the fall about forgiveness, about atonement, about teshuvah, about repair. Sometimes like to joke that it's a good thing that Yom Kippur comes around each September, because by the time we're a month into the new church year, I've already disappointed or offended or let a whole bunch of people down and stand in need of forgiveness myself. I like to joke that Yom Kippur comes around every year because this stuff is so very human. To exist in relationship with other people involves bumping up against them in all sorts of ways, and involves the need, the necessity of practicing forgiveness and atonement. There is an ordinary, even daily aspect of forgiveness. And it is probably the spiritual practice that is most difficult and challenging for a lot of people. Should I forgive? How do I forgive? Is it even possible to forgive? Is it desirable? And here we come to the fall of 2020. What the hell does forgiveness even look like right now? So that's what I want to consider right now. Forgiveness reconsidered. Forgiveness reconsidered. I once went to a martial arts demonstration. This was a long time ago, and my memory is a little bit hazy, but you can imagine it. There were these different people wearing martial arts attire, gis. They were demonstrating these kicks, and it was impressive with how high they could get their feet in the air. They broke boards impressively with their hands and their feet chopping. And then one of the martial artists took out this fearsome-looking object. My memory is a bit foggy of what that fearsome object was exactly, but I have the vague recollection that it resembled a pitchfork. I might not remember correctly, but that's what I remember, so that's what we'll go with. And the man wielding this fearsome-looking pitchfork turned to the spectators, turned to us, and this is the part I remember with crystal clarity. He turned to the spectators and asked, "Is this a weapon or is it a tool? Is it a weapon or is it a tool?" And then he went on to mime using this object as a weapon, making aggressive pokes with it, But then he went on to mime using the object as a tool. We might imagine it as a pitchfork, moving a pile of hay or whatever, getting work done. And of course, the answer to that question was that it depends. If he was using it to accomplish something life-giving, something constructive, then it's a tool. And if he was using it to hurt, to destroy, to kill, then it becomes a weapon. Is this a weapon or is this a tool? It depends on the purposes for which it is used. And as I reflect on forgiveness, this distinction between a tool and a weapon seems relevant. I'd like to consider forgiveness as a weapon and as a tool. There's something that I'm not sure anyone has ever told about forgiveness, which is that forgiveness can be weaponized. Forgiveness can be wielded as a weapon against those who have been wronged. Someone has been hurt, someone has been harmed, someone has been wronged, and then that person is told that they have an obligation to forgive the person who has hurt them, that they have an obligation to forgive their abuser, that doing so is what they need to do to be a full person. The passage with which I began this sermon, the passage from the Gospel of Matthew, in which Jesus tells Peter that he must forgive not just 7 times, but 70 times 7 times, that passage has been misused. That passage has been abused to tell people who have been hurt that they should grin and bear it, that they should not stick up for themselves, that they're under some moral, under some spiritual obligation to forgive their abuser, their tormentor, their oppressor. I think religion has done a disservice to people, has hurt people, when it's told people who are victims, who are survivors, that they have a moral obligation to forgive, that they have a moral obligation to keep forgiving, even as they are continuing to be hurt. Forgiveness can be used as a weapon, as something that keeps people trapped in an abusive environment. Healthy religion never tells people that they should tolerate abuse. Healthy religion never tells people that they should tolerate abuse. And much has been written right now about how living in our society right now is a lot like being trapped in a relationship with an abusive family member. The lying, the gaslighting, the threats, the manipulation, the blaming, the excuses, the erratic behavior. Seriously, much has been written about how living in our society right now is a lot like being trapped in a relationship with an abusive family member. To talk about forgiveness in this circumstance is to weaponize forgiveness, to make it an accomplice to abuse. It is to pile another expectation on the person who is hurt. But forgiveness at the same time also has other uses. Forgiveness can also be used as a tool. If that passage from Matthew about forgiving 70 times 7 times is one of the most challenging and troubling passages, perhaps the most uplifting and inspiring story of forgiveness is the story of the prodigal son. We know that story. A wealthy man has 2 sons and divides their inheritances between them. One son stays close to home, carefully investing this gift, honoring it, growing it. The other son journeys afar, wasting it on profligate living. When the prodigal son returns, he throws himself at his father's feet, begs for forgiveness, begs to be allowed even to sleep in the corner of the barn and to be fed the scraps in the farmyard But no, his father forgives him, welcomes him back, orders a feast to be held in his honor. This is another view of forgiveness, another view of what is possible with it. Forgiveness can be given to us or not, but there is nothing we can do to compel it, or force it, or merit it, or deserve it. It is only the person who has been wronged who can control whether or not to forgive. And it is only the person who has been wronged who can set the conditions, the prerequisites for forgiveness. It is a tool that they are free to use. And that's the other key about forgiveness, is that it must be offered freely. In the case of the prodigal son, forgiveness is used as a tool for restoring a relationship. It's used as a constructive tool. I actually reached out to a group of Unitarian Universalist ministers, my colleagues, to ask them what they might say about forgiveness in this moment. Reverend Sadie Lansdale, my colleague in Greensboro, North Carolina, offered an interesting take on how forgiveness could be used as either a tool or a weapon. Reverend Lansdale is a radical and firebrand and offered this thought in her direct style, quote, "Forgiveness is for one another, not for the capitalists and bot politicians abusing us. We have to figure out how to repair our relationships with each other," Sadie said, "in order to become more effective in resisting systems of exploitation." Sadie is making this interesting point, this distinction, that forgiveness can be a tool for moving us towards justice, or it can be a weapon that excuses, and by excusing, sustains injustice. Two other colleagues added interesting comments on forgiveness. Reverend Hilary Krivchenya, my colleague in the western suburbs of Chicago, said that for Yom Kippur, she will be preaching on reparations to African Americans and indigenous people as a form of atonement. Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. But she also cautioned. She said, "I'm not sure we have the right or are called to forgive those who hurt others. We can only extend forgiveness when it is we ourselves who has been hurt or wronged. That we can't compel or create forgiveness when we are not party to the harm." Reverend Amy Zucker Morgenstern, my colleague who serves in Palo Alto, California, spoke of reading Jewish philosopher Maimonides and finding him quite universalist. According to Maimonides, there is no sin that is too awful for teshuvah, for turning. But, Amy says, we must remember that teshuvah means turning one's heart, feeling true remorse. We ought to remember that there are indeed wrongs that are simply irreversible. Forgiveness, atonement, reparations, teshuvah, turning. Forgiveness remains one of the most challenging spiritual topics around. I'm certainly going to preach on it next year, in year 19 of ministry. But what if, this morning, what if, instead of seeing forgiveness as a moral imperative, something that we must do to be made whole, something that we must do to be a good person, instead of seeing it as something we would do if we were good or spiritually mature, what if we instead saw forgiveness as neither good nor bad, but as something that is for us to use as a tool or as a weapon. Forgiveness can be destructive and harmful. It can keep us trapped, and in keeping us trapped in a system that is unjust, it can delay and move us away from actual justice. Or forgiveness can be used as a tool for building, constructing, empowering. It can restore relationships in ways that empower us to move forward in bold and powerful ways. It is up to you to decide how and if you will use it. Amen. And blessed be.
To all
Please join with me in the words by which we extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Now please join in singing Shalom.